At 91 years old, Don Cherry signed off his podcast with a simple toodaloo, ending a chapter that began with Ron MacLean angrily pointing at him during one of hockey's most heated on-air moments. The man known as Grapes had spent decades as Canada's most beloved and controversial hockey voice, but his final years were marked by isolation and sadness after a career-ending scandal. Cherry wasn't always the lightning rod we knew him to be. Born in Kingston, Ontario in 1934, he started as just another hockey dreamer. His professional playing career began in 1954, but he spent most of his 18 seasons grinding it out in the minor leagues with teams like the Hershey Bears and Rochester Americans. He played 767 games in the American Hockey League, collected 259 points, and racked up over 1,000 penalty minutes. His claim to fame as a player was actually quite humble. He played exactly one NHL game, a playoff contest with the Boston Bruins in 1955. That single game became the foundation of everything Cherry would build. It made him an everyman, a blue-collar player who understood hockey from the trenches rather than from a superstar's pedestal. This credibility was vital to his ability to connect with audiences and became a key reason for his long-term success on television. After retiring in 1969, Cherry briefly worked construction and sold cars before making his celebrated comeback to hockey. In 1971, he rejoined the Rochester Americans as a player coach, and by 1972, he was coaching full-time. His success was immediate and impressive. He won the AHL Coach of the Year award in 1974, earning the Louis A.R. Pieri Memorial Award. This achievement landed him the head coaching job with the Boston Bruins in 1974. His tenure there was remarkable. He led the team to 4 straight first-place finishes in their division and 2 Stanley Cup Finals appearances. For his leadership, he won the NHL Coach of the Year award, the Jack Adams Award, for the 1975-76 season. Cherry had found his calling, and his aggressive, old-school coaching style was paying dividends. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Don Cherry's complex legacy, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think about his impact on hockey culture. Your thoughts matter, and I read every single comment. But Cherry's coaching career would end in dramatic fashion during Game 7 of the 1979 Eastern Conference Finals against the Montreal Canadiens. With the Bruins leading in less than 2 minutes remaining, his team was called for having too many men on the ice. This penalty led to a tying goal for Montreal and an eventual overtime loss. The mistake cost Boston a trip to the Stanley Cup Finals and Cherry his job. This incident was more than just a coaching error. It perfectly captured Cherry's entire career approach. His high-risk, aggressive style led to immense success and popularity, but it was also prone to critical, self-inflicted errors that could unravel everything. The same brash, unfiltered personality that brought triumph would later cause his broadcasting downfall. After Boston fired him, Cherry coached one more season with the Colorado Rockies in 1979-80. The team's motto under his leadership perfectly captured his philosophy: come to the fights and watch a Rockies game break out. The team finished last, and Cherry was fired after just one season. He concluded his NHL coaching career with 250 wins, 153 losses, and 77 ties. With his coaching days over, Cherry transitioned to broadcasting in 1980 when CBC hired him to provide color commentary for the Stanley Cup playoffs. The public's reaction to his forthright opinions and flamboyant style was so strong that the network hired him full-time and created a dedicated segment for his views. Thus, Coach's Corner was born. The show became a cultural phenomenon. For the first 6 years, Cherry co-hosted with Dave Hodge, but in 1987, he formed his famous partnership with Ron MacLean. This duo became a staple of Hockey Night in Canada for 39 years. The segment sometimes drew more viewers than the games themselves, with Cherry's commentary delivered in his unmistakable style and increasingly flamboyant suits. The success of Coach's Corner came from the unique dynamic between the fiery Cherry and the measured MacLean. MacLean acted as a moderating voice, providing balance to Cherry's often unfiltered rants. This allowed the show to appeal to a broad audience, those who loved Cherry's opinions and those who tuned in to see what controversial statement he would make next. Cherry capitalized on his massive popularity by building a successful media empire. He starred in the Don Cherry's Rock'em Sock'em Hockey video series from 1989 to 2005, which glorified hard hits and fighting. He also hosted a national radio show called Don Cherry's Grapevine from 1984 to 2019, and a chain of sports bars was founded under his brand. These ventures demonstrated how his old-school identity became an economic powerhouse, which explains why his employers tolerated his controversies for so long. Cherry's commentary was consistently and fiercely pro-fighting, a core element of his old-school philosophy. He saw fighting as an essential and honorable part of the sport, placing him in direct conflict with a changing game and society. This became most evident in 2011 when he publicly attacked former NHL enforcers who spoke out against fighting, calling them pukes, turncoats, and hypocrites. His argument was simple: you guys were fighters, and now you don't want guys to make the same living you did. This outburst led to threats of legal action and forced a reluctant apology from Cherry. Throughout his broadcasting career, Cherry made numerous controversial comments about various groups. He often expressed disdain for foreign-born players, particularly those from Sweden, Finland, and Russia. He also targeted French Canadians, calling them whiners. Specific examples include a 2004 incident where he was investigated for stating that most of the guys who wear them, visors, are Europeans and French guys. In 1998, he referred to Olympic gold medalist Jean-Luc Brassard as that French guy. The CBC reportedly used a 7-second delay on his segments to censor problematic comments, proving his employers were fully aware of his tendencies for decades. This broadcast delay was clear evidence that Cherry's controversial comments weren't recent developments, but part of a decades-long balancing act where his value was constantly weighed against potential liability. The network had invested in technical infrastructure specifically to manage the risk he posed while keeping him on air. His controversial nature wasn't limited to hockey commentary. Cherry frequently crossed into divisive political territory, making statements that alienated many viewers while energizing his core supporters. These political rants weren't random tangents, but calculated moves that elevated him from a simple hockey commentator to a cultural figurehead for traditional Canadian values. This strategy worked, building him a fiercely loyal base that saw him as defending their way of life against modern changes. Cherry also used his platform to air his political views, publicly criticizing left-wing media, questioning climate change, and defending his conservative ideologies. He famously endorsed Rob Ford for Toronto mayor in 2010, ending his statement with, "Put that in your pipe, you left-wing kooks." His political rhetoric was even compared to Donald Trump's by the New York Times. On November 9, 2019, Cherry delivered his final career-ending rant on Coach's Corner. He singled out what he perceived as immigrants for not wearing poppies to honor Remembrance Day, stating, "You people, you love our way of life, you love our milk and honey, at least you could pay a couple bucks for a poppy or something like that. These guys paid for your way of life that you enjoy in Canada. These guys paid the biggest price." The comments triggered immediate and massive public backlash, with condemnation from the NHL, politicians, and the Royal Canadian Legion. The volume of complaints overwhelmed the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council's processing capacity. Unlike past comments that could be framed as hockey-related, this explicitly targeted immigrants and intertwined a national symbol with xenophobic statements. Sportsnet fired Cherry on November 11, 2019. Cherry famously refused to apologize, telling reporters, "I know what I said and I meant it." Still do. This refusal reaffirmed the principles that had guided his entire career: stubborn loyalty, unfiltered honesty, and a refusal to compromise. Following his firing, Cherry and his son launched the Don Cherry's Grapevine podcast, which he hosted until signing off at age 91. Despite the controversies, Cherry remained beloved by many. He was voted the 7th greatest Canadian in a 2004 CBC poll, placing him among figures like Tommy Douglas and Pierre Trudeau. This demonstrates the immense divide in Canadian national identity between those who cherish his traditionalist values and those who find his comments abhorrent. Reactions from hockey players to his firing were complex and often sympathetic. Max Domi called Cherry a family friend and a big part of hockey, stating he was a reason why many players play the game. John Tavares found the situation disappointing on many fronts, while Jason Spezza called Cherry an icon, but acknowledged that discriminatory comments were unacceptable. Perhaps the most revealing perspective came from former NHLer Terry Ryan, who stated that while he disagreed with the comments, Cherry was not a monster, and that the man he knew privately was different from his public persona. Ryan recalled Cherry once telling him to be a unifying force in the locker room, particularly for minorities and Europeans. This revealed the complexity of Cherry's character, a man who privately could be a sweet mentor, while publicly being an inflammatory provocateur. Don Cherry's legacy remains a complex tapestry of triumph and controversy. He's remembered for his vibrant personality, signature suits, relentless promotion of fighting, and unwavering loyalty to what he considered Canadian hockey. However, his legacy is inseparable from his inflammatory remarks and outdated views. His story forces a national conversation about whether a public figure's contributions can be separated from their contentious beliefs. The opposing viewpoints show that his story will remain a lightning rod for debate for years to come. What do you think about Don Cherry's complex legacy? Was he a vital Canadian icon or a symbol of outdated values? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into hockey's most fascinating personalities. Ultimately, Cherry's career was a mirror reflecting the cultural divides within the nation he so proudly proclaimed to represent.